Picture this. A woman sits in a candlelit Parisian salon, draped in a silk evening gown, a glass of the finest Bordeaux in her hand, wine from her own vineyard. She is stunning. She is powerful. She is the Baroness de Rothschild, married into one of the wealthiest dynasties in human history. Now picture her, 3 years later, barefoot in the frozen mud of a Nazi death camp, her silk replaced by rags, her vineyard stolen, her daughter ripped from her arms at gunpoint, and then gone, burned. That is the story we are telling today. One woman, one of the richest names on earth, and one of the Holocaust's most forgotten crimes. Welcome to WW2 Time Tales, where we don't just read history, we feel it. If you're new here, subscribe right now and hit that bell. We tell the stories the textbooks skipped, the ones that keep you awake at night. Now let's go back to the night France died, June 22nd, 1940, Compiègne, France. A forest, a railway car. Reporters standing outside described an eerie silence. Birds had stopped singing. Only the shuffle of boots on gravel broke the stillness. Inside that carriage, French officials signed away their nation, not to a foreign empire across an ocean, but to a man who had started life as a failed Austrian painter who had slept on park benches in Vienna, and who had just crushed the mightiest military tradition in Western Europe in 46 days. 46 days, France, the country of Napoleon, of Verdun, of the Foreign Legion, gone in less than 7 weeks. What replaced it was something far more sinister than a military occupation. The Vichy government, France's new collaborationist regime, didn't just obey the Nazis, it competed with them. French police arrested Jewish citizens before the Germans even asked. French bureaucrats designed their own racial laws. French lawyers drafted regulations to strip Jewish families of everything: their businesses, their bank accounts, their homes, their names. By July 1941, the Vichy regime had launched what it coldly called Aryanization, a government program to seize all Jewish-owned property in France and transfer it to the French state or approved buyers: vineyards, factories, apartment buildings, art collections worth millions. Among the properties seized, a legendary estate in the Médoc Chateau Mouton Rothschild, one of the most celebrated vineyards in the entire world. And with that vineyard came a name the Nazis had been waiting to deal with. The woman named Lily. She was not born into the Rothschild dynasty. She was born into it through love, and through the kind of burning, complicated passion that great novels are written about. Her birth name was Elisabeth Pelletier de Chambure, Paris, March 9th, 1902. Her friends called her Lily. Her family was Catholic, aristocratic, and deeply French. Her ancestors had ridden with Napoleon himself across the frozen fields of Prussia and the sun-scorched plains of Spain. By 1923, Lily had married Marc de Beckeremy, the son of a Belgian nobleman. They had a son, Edouard, in 1924. A respectable marriage, a comfortable life. But Lily was not a woman built for comfortable lives. Sometime in the early 1930s, she fell headlong into an affair with the French Baron Philippe de Rothschild, one of the most magnetic, charismatic, and reckless men in Parisian society. Philippe was a racing car driver, a poet, a theatrical producer, and a wine baron, all at once. He was also, by a twist of fate that would have made a novelist blush, a cousin by marriage to Lily's own husband. Their chemistry was electric and catastrophic in equal measure. By 1933, while still technically married to Marc, Lily gave birth to Philippe's daughter, Philippine Mathilde Camille de Rothschild. On January 22, 1934, the day her divorce from Marc was finalized, Lily married Philippe de Rothschild. She converted to Judaism. The wedding ceremony was conducted by Julian Weil, the Grand Rabbi of Paris, in one of the most talked-about social events of the season. They were the golden couple of 1930s France. Wealthy beyond imagination, beautiful, bold. Their home was the kind of place where artists, politicians, and royalty mingled over bottles of Mouton Rothschild, wine that sold for prices most Frenchmen couldn't earn in a month. But the storm behind the glamour was real. Philippe later wrote that their marriage was a partnership of great passion but also enormous tempestuousness and despair. In 1938, they had a son, Charles Henri. The boy was born severely disabled and died within days of birth. The grief was unbearable. It fractured what was left between them. By 1939, Elizabeth had reverted to her maiden name, Pelletier de Chambure. The most glamorous marriage in France was over. Then the Germans came, and none of it mattered anymore. Paris fell on June 14, 1940. 8 days later, the armistice. On July 10, 1940, the French National Assembly handed Marshal Philippe Pétain, a 84-year-old WW1 hero, absolute authority over the French state. No constitution ever followed, just decrees. The Republican motto, Liberté, Égalité, Fraternité, was physically scrubbed from public buildings across France and replaced with work, family, fatherland. In city halls, busts of Marianne, France's symbol of freedom, were smashed. Petain's portrait went up in their place. Free speech was abolished overnight. Criticism of the government became a criminal offense, and the police, men who had been protecting French citizens for generations, were now ordered to hunt them. Both Elisabeth and Philippe were arrested by the Vichy government early on. Their vineyard was confiscated. But then, inexplicably, they were released. Philippe took the exit. He fled across the English Channel, joined de Gaulle's Free French forces, and spent the war fighting to take his country back. Elizabeth stayed. Her reasoning was understandable, even logical, on paper. She had been born Catholic. Her family had served France since before the Revolution. Her maiden name carried no Jewish associations. Surely, she thought, the laws targeting Jews would not reach a woman with her background, her connections, her history. This was the most dangerous miscalculation of her life. By 1941, Elizabeth had been arrested again, this time for allegedly attempting to cross the internal demarcation line using a document filed under her maiden name. A senior Vichy official named Fernand de Bernon reportedly used his influence to have her released. But the third arrest, the final one, came in May or June of 1944. This time it was the Gestapo, and to this day, historians debate exactly why they came for her. There are 3 separate accounts, and each one is more disturbing than the last. The first, Elizabeth had quietly organized a charity operation for Jewish prisoners held at the Drancy transit camp, men and women being processed and loaded onto cattle cars for deportation to Auschwitz. She helped people she didn't know, people the regime had declared subhuman. The Gestapo found out. The second, the Gestapo wanted leverage on Philippe, her estranged husband who was by now fighting alongside the Allies and gathering intelligence for the Free French forces. They believed that if they held Elisabeth, Philippe might come out of hiding or give up information. They were wrong about Philippe. They were right about having her. The third, and perhaps the most chilling, Elisabeth attended a fashion show, a seasonal collection presentation by Italian designer Elsa Schiaparelli, one of Paris's most glamorous social events. She arrived and was shown to her seat. Beside her sat Suzanne Abetz, the wife of Heinrich Otto Abetz, Nazi Germany's ambassador to Vichy France. Elizabeth looked at the woman beside her. She stood up, and she moved to a different seat, a social snub, a silent, dignified act of refusal. She would not sit beside the wife of a Nazi ambassador. Within weeks, the Gestapo was at her door. When the Gestapo officers arrived to arrest Elisabeth, her 10-year-old daughter Philippine was with her. 2 officers stood in the doorway. They argued, quietly, in German, about whether to take the child as well. One of the officers refused. He had a daughter at home, he said, the same age. He couldn't do it, so Philippine was left behind, standing in the doorway, watching the only parent she had left being taken away. She was 10 years old, and she would never see her mother again. On August 15, 1944, at 11 o'clock at night, Elisabeth de Rothschild was loaded onto a train at the Paris Gare de Pantin station. What she didn't know, what none of the prisoners knew, was that less than 2 weeks later, Paris would be liberated. This train was the last major convoy of political prisoners to leave the Paris region before the liberation. It was also the single largest prisoner transport ever organized in France under German occupation. 1,654 men and 543 women. 85% were French. The rest were American, British, and Canadian airmen shot down over France, SOE agents, resistance fighters, and prisoners of war. The French resistance attempted to stop the train. They failed. The men were sent to Buchenwald. The women, Elisabeth among them, arrived at Ravensbruck on August 21, 1944. Ravensbruck was the only major concentration camp the Nazis built specifically for women. Located 90 kilometers north of Berlin, in the pine forests of Brandenburg, it had been swallowing women from across occupied Europe since 1939. Poles, Russians, Jews, Roma, resistors, intellectuals, nurses, tintuals, nurses, teachers, mothers. In total, approximately 132,000 women passed through Ravensbruck's gates. Over 92,000 of them died there, through forced labor, starvation, disease, execution, and medical experimentation. Among the SS guards were women, female overseers called Aufseherinnen, who subjected prisoners to sadistic punishments, beatings, ice water baths in winter, starvation rations designed to kill slowly, work shifts that lasted until prisoners collapsed. And then there was the crematorium. When the Red Army liberated Ravensbrück on April 30th, 1945, only around 3,500 sick and dying prisoners remained. The SS had evacuated or killed the rest in the final weeks before liberation. Elisabeth de Rothschild was not among the survivors. Official Nazi records, the same records that the Reich kept with chilling bureaucratic precision, state that Elisabeth died of epidemic typhus on March 23, 1945, 1 month before liberation, 1 month before freedom. But Philippe de Rothschild, the man who had loved her, fought with her, lost a child with her, and spent years trying to bring her home, wrote something different in his memoirs. According to Philippe, the 43-year-old Elisabeth Pelletier de Chambure de Rothschild was not killed by disease. She was thrown alive into a Ravensbruck crematorium oven by SS guards. Historians note this fate was not unprecedented. Several female SOE agents and resistance prisoners had been burned alive in the camp's final months as the Nazis attempted to eliminate witnesses and destroy evidence of their crimes. Whether it was typhus or something more deliberately monstrous, the conclusion remains the same. Elisabeth died at Ravensbrück in March 1945, 38 days before the camp was liberated, 36 days before the war in Europe ended. 36 days before the war in Europe ended. She survived everything. The arrests, the deportation, the camp, the winter, and then, at the very edge of liberation, she was gone. Philippe reclaimed Chateau Mouton Rothschild after the war. He dedicated subsequent label artwork on the wine bottles to her memory, a silent tribute pressed into every bottle of Mouton Rothschild from that era forward. Their daughter Philippine grew up, lived a full life, and died in 2014 at the age of 80. Their son Edouard died in 1984. The children outlived the horror. Their mother did not. Elisabeth de Rothschild, born Catholic, converted to Judaism out of love, stripped of everything by a regime built on hatred, is the only member of the Rothschild dynasty known to have been murdered in the Holocaust. Her name deserves to be spoken. Her story deserves to be told. No amount of money, no famous last name, no powerful husband in exile, no aristocratic bloodline stretching back to Napoleon. None of it mattered when the machine of Nazi Germany decided it wanted you. Elisabeth's story is not just a Holocaust story. It is a story about what hatred does when the world looks away and what silence costs us all. If this story moved you, and it should, smash that like button right now. Share this video with someone who needs to understand what this war actually was. Subscribe to WW2 Time Tales and hit that bell, because every week we bring you the faces behind the history, the real people, the real pain, the truth. We'll see you in the next one. This is WW2 Time Tales.